Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Mike from 1AAuto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And next time you need parts for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a rear hub on this 2003 Honda Odyssey. Pretty much the same procedure for any 1999 to 2004 Odyssey. We show you the right hand or passenger side. Procedure is the same for the left hand driver's side. To get the job done, you'll need a new hub from 1AAuto, some jack and jack stands, a 19mm socket with a ratchet and breaker bar, or your lug wrench will work. You'll need a 36mm socket. Put that by itself because it's something that's not always in a regular toolbox. You'll need 12mm and 14mm wrenches or sockets and ratchet, impact driver, a hammer, a sharp cold chisel or an old screwdriver, a torque wrench, and a large C-clamp. First, raise and support the vehicle, then use a 19mm socket and breaker bar. If you're just using hand tools, actually you'll want to loosen the lug nuts when the wheel's on the ground and the vehicle's in park. Loosen the lug nuts first, then raise and support the vehicle. Remove the 5 lug nuts and remove the rear wheel.
Okay, so we're in around behind the rotors. We've got 2 bolts. They're 12mm here and here. So I'm going to put a wrench on them. Hook another wrench on there for some extra leverage. And loosen them.
And just fast forward as we take them the rest of the way out. Now we're going to grab on the caliper and pull it towards the outside of the vehicle. Okay, as we pull it out, that forces the piston back into the caliper and then loosens it up and it comes right off, and then we can kind of prop it up in behind.
Okay, now we take the pads out just by pulling them out of their brackets. Sorry. And now we're putting a wrench on this 14mm bolt here. So we want to remove this one and then this one up here. These 2 bolts hold the caliper bracket on.
Just put a 14mm wrench on there, then hook a larger wrench onto it, or use a larger handle socket and ratchet. Loosen up those bolts and then remove them, and remove the caliper. Fast forward here a little bit.
Okay, so now we're going to use an impact driver. Okay, we're going to load that into the screw, and then you turn it counterclockwise, use a hammer, and give it a good whack, and it loosens up the bolt.
And just fast forward as we remove the screws the rest of the way. Then hopefully your rear rotor comes off as well. If not, you can use a hammer.
Okay, now use a sharp chisel, or you could also use just an old screwdriver and remove the cap. So the bolt is, or the nut is speared here, so we're just going to use our chisel again and kind of okay, so it's now straightened out. Okay, now we're using a 36mm socket and an impact wrench to remove that nut.
Okay, a note here, not everybody has air tools, so you will need the 36mm socket. There's really no way to get around that, but you could also use a large breaker bar to loosen it. Should pull off. Okay, make sure when you unwrap the hub, you take the keeper out, and then just put the hub in and make sure the outer bearing goes in and seats correctly. Okay, so now the new hub from 1AAuto is on there, and then just thread on the bolt.
Now set your torque wrench to 181 foot-pounds and torque the nut on. Okay, now we're going to use kind of a dull punch and serrate the nut.
Okay, now install your new brake rotor for Honda Auto, and then use the 2 screws. I'll fast forward as we put those back in to hold it in place. There's a small rubber plug you want to force out of the old rotor, and then just put it into the new rotor, press it in by hand first, then grab a screwdriver and push it in the rest of the way.
Okay, so before you reinstall the brackets, you want to use a wire brush and clean the stainless steel slides. Some brake pads actually come with new ones, so you either replace them or clean them up. Okay, and then you make sure that your bolt slides are free. If they're not free or have any too much, or they're too sticky, pull them right out, clean them up, and grease them.
Now take your brackets and put them into place. Start the 2 bolts on, and in a minute here I'm just going to fast forward as I get those, basically just get those bolts started and seated.
Okay, set your torque wrench to 45 foot-pounds. Okay, now you slide the outer pad in. Goes right into the slides. Okay, and then the inner one goes in the exact same way. Okay, now you'll want to take your caliper, use a large C-clamp, and make sure you reset the piston. As you tighten it up, the piston gets pushed back into the caliper. Usually, just by pulling on it at the beginning, you're able to reset the piston, but you just want to make sure. And then you can slide the caliper right on. And now put your 12mm bolts back in. Okay, and set your torque wrench to 20 foot-pounds and tighten them up. Now put the dust cap back on, put it in place and just tap it with a hammer.
Okay, now I'm going to fast forward, put the wheel back in place, start all 5 lug nuts on by hand first, and then just kind of preliminarily tighten them, and then lower your vehicle to the ground.
Now set your torque wrench to 90 to 100 foot-pounds and torque the wheel using a star pattern. Okay, whenever you've had the brakes apart, just make sure that you pump the pedal a few times, make sure it's nice and firm, and then before you road test your vehicle, just do test stops from 5 and 10 miles an hour, just to make sure the brakes are working properly.
We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.oneauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll-free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.